Okay, so when I do these BI presentations, I kind of try to make the data interesting, or at least kind of familiar to everybody. So rather than do kind of financial data or data from a project of mine, I try and keep it light-hearted as well. So last few times I've done shark attacks, so I thought I'd make it a little bit more scary, and we'll look at plane crashes. So kind of been a little bit of an interest of mine. You know, there's been a lot of hype about plane crashes, especially high-profile ones, the last couple of years. Obviously, the most recent one. I kind of just been thinking to myself, a little bit of worry and also a little bit of interest. Like, is this kind of more common, or is it just more hyped up in the media? Is it safe to fly? And I kind of put this like a little put together like a little scenario, if you like, for this session to say, right, okay, I'm going to ask my BI expert to kind of analyse some data and report and tell me and reassure me that it is safe to fly. So that's what we're going to be looking at today for the data. So what are the odds then of actually dying in a plane crash? Well, there's kind of loads of stats on the web. This kind of stat, if you like, tells you it's actually you're more likely to die from heat stroke or from a nuclear accident than actually dying in a plane crash. You're less likely to die from a bee sting, apparently. This is an American thing. So it's kind of like, you know, I don't want you to go away from here like petrified and blame me for causing problems in your life. So I'm kind of like, it's a little bit of a kind of light-hearted look at this kind of data, and we'll go away knowing that, you know, it's one of the safest forms of travel. So my task today is to use SharePoint 2013 BI and show some reports and dashboards. And I've got the full stack in front of me. I've got SharePoint on premises, and I've also got Office 365, and I'm going to kind of look at 2 or 3 options. Those are the sorts of things that I've been tasked to show, so like a map, kind of crash rates per year. Also note here, like I want to kind of, someone wants a printable report, you know, like report on my desk Monday morning, that kind of thing. And also, you know, someone wants the dashboard available for mobile as well. So a bit of background first to Microsoft BI. I kind of group BI into 3 areas. So we have personal BI, which is, I guess, you know, BI is available to you at your desk. You can spin up Excel or the Power BI Designer, which is coming soon. I'll talk about that later. And it's kind of, things are in your context. It's like an ad hoc report. You might want to create, the data's available to you and it's kind of fairly well formed. You don't really need IT to do this. You can do this yourself, and that's the personal BI. The next kind of group is team. So I want to take it a next step further. I might want to share that report with my team or my department, and I need a medium to do that, and SharePoint Office 365 is the way to do that. I also have add-ins now for Excel, Power Pivot, Power View. You know, these tools need a little bit more training, so require a little bit more involvement. And I call that Team BI. And that's provided, you know, SharePoint Office 365 at the hub of that. And then you've got Corporate BI, which is a little bit more strategic in your organisation. So you've got a larger organisation, you've got lots of data sources you want to pull together. And you need something it's a little bit more pre-planned rather than ad hoc reporting. You know, you want something that's generated over time and is a little bit more professional, so to speak. So that's what I call corporate BI. Corporate BI is more expensive, takes longer to develop. That's where you need your skilled analysis services guys and reporting services guys that come in, and data modelers to really look at your data. So BI is Microsoft are tending to head towards the team and personal BI. That's where they want to get everyone involved in BI and not just this kind of high-end corporate. And if you looked like a few years ago, it would just BI would all be in the corporate end pretty much. So what do we have today across the BI stack? What options do we have? And these are the kind of, I guess, the main ones that you've got across on-premises and Office 365 available to you. So if you've got, Excel services has been around since 2007. Power Pivot and Power View add on to that now, and you've got those available in the cloud as well. Reporting services, SharePoint integrated reporting services, is not available in the cloud, but it is available even if you've only got SharePoint Foundation, for example. You don't need an enterprise license for that. Performance Point has been around again since 2007, but not really seen many changes the last few years, so my feel is that that's kind of heading out the door. And then Power BI sites and Q&A that come with that, obviously they're not available on premises. These are kind of two, BI's in a funny place at the moment. It's kind of like almost, Microsoft have got there and now they've kind of ripped it all up, and with Power BI and the changes that they're making with Power BI, they're almost going back to kind of re-engineering everything again. So at the moment, the Power BI stuff is based all around Excel 2013 and the add-ins. But as of kind of the announcements earlier this year, they're moving away from Excel, and because they don't want to be tied with Excel, they want to kind of have their own products now. So they kind of, everything's going to be based around PowerBI.com and Dashboard Designer. And this is kind of reflected in these two Gartner charts. So one was taken 2 years ago, and you can see Microsoft up here, quite far along the visionaries and quite high up. This is execution of delivery, so quite mature. And now you'll see they're kind of still a market leader, but down here again. So almost like started re-engineering their stuff again. And it is quite a confusing landscape, even no matter where you guys are in the room, whether you've got 2010 or whatever. I've always found it confusing to know what tool to use or how to get the best out of BI. It seems quite a hodgepodge of products. And what is Power BI? And Power BI is like one of these general terms that people use across the board. But if you break it down, at the moment, version 1 of Power BI is actually, a lot of it is on premises. So you've got Excel on premises, you've got these add-ins, the Power Query, Power View add-ins. You've got the data management gateway, so you can hook into your on-premises data. And what you actually get for your Power BI license, well, you only get really a SharePoint site, a Power BI SharePoint site, and you get the Q&A facility, which is basically asking natural language questions of your data. And for that, you'll pay about $40 a year, $40 a month at the moment, but that's coming right down. The changes are including price as well and making it more accessible and more cheaper for people to use. Okay, so that's like a bit of background, and now let's have a look at some of the reporting options that we've got. So at the moment, Excel services is a common one. It's been around since 2007. It is actually the foundation of Power BI. So if you have on-premises and you're looking to implement Power Pivot for SharePoint or Power View, underpinning all of that is Excel services. You need to, if you're an infrastructure guy, you'd need to implement Excel services first before you can build on top of that. So it's always been there, and it's kind of the hub of everything at the moment for SharePoint. It's a great dashboarding tool, and people overlook it, and there's all the hypes around Power View now. But as I'll show you, you can use some great features within Excel. So why would you use, or when would you use Excel services? And I'm talking about just Excel services and Excel alone as a standalone product. So not thinking about any add-ins at the moment at this stage. And I'd always say if you're looking to get started in BI, I'd always look at Excel services first and not worry about the add-ins, etc. first. Just see what options you've got. So it's ideal when most people have got an Excel whiz in-house where they can create charts. They're really, really good at creating charts and they know their way around Excel. I'd always say, bring those guys out of the the back bedroom, so to speak, and you know, I recently was on a project where, you know, we set the infrastructure up and got the Excel services and Power Pivot and Power View already on premises for them to use, and they did everything they needed to do dashboard-wise just in plain Excel. The guy was brilliant in Excel, didn't actually need to use Power View, and put the dashboards out exactly how the business wanted it, and it was a great start for them. One of the important things with Excel is you've got really fine control over how your look and feel of your dashboard. You know, some management are sometimes quite particular about how they want the thing to look, you know, and you can't always achieve that. Certainly can't achieve that in Power View. But with Excel, you have got fine control over it. When would I not use it? I certainly wouldn't use it if I really need to kind of print things off, because if I'm rendering an Excel report in SharePoint, there's no kind of out-of-the-box print facility as such. And if I've got, you know, unstructured data, I need a medium to model that data. That's where I either need Power Pivot to do that, or I do that offline in SQL. So if you've got corporate data source where you've got someone in, you know, your IT guys, have prepared all of your data for you, and you're just kind of connecting to some data in SQL or even in a flat file or something, Excel's like ideal. Okay, so let's have a look at just using Excel. So for this, I've just got a. Oops.
Just get to your desktop.
Okay. Okay. So so for this, I've just got some plane crash data I've pulled off the internet actually. So I've got the kind of the operator, the location, the date, fatalities, people on board, kind of thing. And this is the data set I'm using for all of my presentations today actually. So for Excel, once I've got my data in Excel, in fact this is the one that I want, I can just use Excel pivot charts. So let's insert a pivot table, and I can do, for example, fatalities per year, and we'll swap these guys over. Pivot charts, you know, most Excel guys know their way around pivot charts or pivot tables, and can create some great reports from that, from any kind of data source. Now from here I can insert a chart, and with Excel I've got, you know, such a wide range of charts that I can pick from. So I'm going to pick a line chart. Okay. It's always a little bit more tricky trying to do your demos here on this kind of, with this resolution. Now, you know, again with Excel I can, once I've got my chart here, you know, I've got some Excel out of the box, you know, it gives me all sorts of options for changing color schemes, changing the look and feel of my chart. You know, I've got themes already pre-built in for me. Let's go with this one. Now I've also got things like, let's insert another pivot table based on my table. And this time we'll do number of crashes, for example. And sort those around again. And we'll do another little chart from that one. Pop that one underneath. Now, again, I can, you know, I've got quite good precision here of where particularly I want the dashboard, where I want to join my charts up together. You know, very fine positioning of my components, if you like. I can also do things like, again, just out-of-the-box type stuff with slicers. So if I wanted to look at, say, a country, pop that over here. And if I wanted to, let's just wire that up to my other chart that I've got. So if I wanted to look at, you know, let's have a look at USA, for example. Then I can filter my chart there quite well. And finally, let's look at adding a timeline. So if I've got a date, field, there's some out-of-the-box kind of sliders that come with Excel, like this one, where I can just kind of the user can and I can change that to years. And if I wanted to look at, quite easily, if I wanted to look at between 2008 and 2013, again, that will update my chart for me. And I can, you know, quite easily, again, wire that up. Let's have a look. Pick this, options. I've got color options again, and I can wire that up to my other pivot chart. So, I mean, with the resolution, it's not that great on here. So what I'll do before I upload this to SharePoint, I'll do a couple of quick things. So I'm going to hide my pivot data. So I'm going to hide those columns, and I'll also kind of maybe take off my grid lines and my headings. So I've got like a white canvas, and maybe I'd position these around until I got the look how I wanted it, basically. And that's kind of a good way of just dashboarding and getting something up to SharePoint. Now, if I wanted to push that up to SharePoint, I would just save this. So I take my file, copy it. I'm going to copy it across to I've got a SharePoint 2013 virtual machine here. And I'm just going to overwrite my previous copy and upload that into I've got a document library, so as long as I've got a document library and I've got Excel services configured on the farm, which I have, then I can just upload no, just you can see the document type there, actually, content type there, so just document is fine. It knows the library, there's there's some settings on the library, actually. Which is quite common, where you've got here default behavior of documents. So if I use the server default open in the browser, if I've got Excel services installed, it will render it in Excel services. If not, it will open it in Excel. But it's the simplest, by far the simplest of BI features to set up. So there's all I need to do as a user is open my document, and I've got a dashboard. And you can also, Excel services comes with a web part, so I can put a web part on a page, and I can just show this sheet. Or if I've marked up my charts properly, I can actually just show a chart. And as someone would have to do then is update the workbook in the background, and my chart would update for me. So it's kind of, room 101 SharePoint BI. It's like for an infrastructure guy, it's the easiest of services to set up for you. Power Pivot, if you're on premises, Power Pivot can be quite involved and costly. Excel services, as long as you've got an enterprise server license and you've got the CALs, it's by far the quickest thing to set up. And you're off and running then, and you haven't got this kind of, as a power user, you're not waiting on IT to set stuff up for you. So kind of a summarise of that really is, it's easy to use. Training-wise, you only need to know Excel. Infrastructure-wise, it's easy to set up. And as far as like positioning things on the canvas, it's like, very intricate to use.
Take this further and move your data out of the Excel file and put it somewhere else?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I just for my demo, I've kept things simple. I've been burnt in the past relying on, data out in the cloud somewhere. So I just keep it all self-contained. But of course, yeah, I mean, if I go back to my crash data, obviously I can get external data from pretty much anywhere. So, most common one would be SQL Server, for example, within your organisation, or flat files, or even a Power Pivot workbook or something like that. So yeah, by all means. But what you don't have in Excel is the ability to kind of model data on the fly. That's where you need your Power Pivot add-in. Okay, so next thing we're going to look at is reporting services. And again, it's how many people have got reporting services or use reporting services here? So yeah, quite a few. So again, it's a fairly, for SharePoint 2013, it's quite straightforward to set up. 2010 and previous, it wasn't. It was quite difficult. The good things about reporting services for SharePoint is that it is tightly integrated with SharePoint. So you get all of the, and a report is treated as any other document in SharePoint. So you can do document management on it. You can do publishing of your reports. You can do workflow off the back of your reports, alerting off the back of a new report coming in, that kind of thing. Now, when would I use and when would I not use SSRS? So it's ideal. I would always fall back on SSRS when I need to do some kind of printed or kind of corporate tabular style reporting. One of the great features that not many other tools have is the ability to kind of almost configurable printing and exporting to a number of kind of different formats. So if you wanted to export your report as PDF, you know, the old style kind of I want it on my desk in the morning, that kind of thing, or your board want to take a report to the board meeting. Reporting Services is still the best tool to deliver that. And I always say, you know, think about whether what you're trying to deliver is a dashboard or a report. There is a difference. A dashboard is an at-a-glance kind of view, so it's meant to be look up on the screen, just like, you know, your car dashboard. You quickly glance at it to get information. A report is something that someone, you know, generally doesn't change. The structure doesn't change. It's expected a report that someone has on a weekly or a monthly basis, and it's something that someone will go through in a bit more detail and kind of analyse for themselves. A dashboard, a lot of the analysis is done for you so that you can just get the information quicker. Not ideal when you're in the cloud because Reporting Services is not available to you. So it's an on-premises option. I've heard rumours that the new Power BI, you'll be able to take a Reporting Services report and upload it and add it to your dashboard. So that's something that may be coming later this year. If you want a quick ad hoc report, someone says, can you just knock this up? I'd say Reporting Services, again, is not really for you. It is the report builder tool, even though it's designed for non-IT people, is still a lot more complicated to use. And if you want to show maps, there is a mapping tool in SSRS, but it's not intuitive. It's not very quick to use. You've got to have your data structured, and you've got to have kind of explicit latitude, longitude type data for it to be able to work properly. Sorry, I'll be able to do the honours again.
What are the pros and cons of native mode versus SharePoint integrated mode in 2013?
So,
PowerPoint.
yeah. So the pros and cons. Really, the integration of SharePoint. So if you want, if you've got native mode, you can still build your reports in the old-fashioned kind of way, and there are web parts you can pull the reports into SharePoint. But the management of the reports, the security of the reports is all still over in the old report manager. Whereas the beauty of having it in SharePoint is that, all of the security, the permissions, the management of the reports is all owned within SharePoint. So, you know, you haven't got these two roles anymore. You've brought it all into SharePoint, and it's just like managing another site or a site collection.
Are there any disadvantages in moving to SharePoint integrated mode?
I would say no. I'd say unless your reports are, you know, completely outside SharePoint, you've got, you know, your SharePoint users and your your report users, if you like, are two mutually exclusive sets of people, then I would say probably not worth the effort of bringing it in. But usually, if you want to show reports on the intranet, so I would say yes, you need, you know, all the advantages are to bring it in-house into SharePoint. Okay, so if I go back to my just go back to my site. So I've got this reports, my document library that I had Excel in. When I configure SSRS, I get some content types, and I've added those content types or a content type to the library. So now, as well as creating a document, I've got a report builder report. This will load the report builder tool for me. and here's my kind of area now I've got to build this report through. So again, it's a tool to be trained in. It's not that intuitive in my book. It hasn't, again, it also, version 3 of this came out for with SQL Server 2008 R2, and it hasn't changed a great deal since. So even though SQL 2014's come out, you know, you look at the new features for Report Builder, and you know, there's not that much being done to it. It's kind of like been left. So here, first thing I'm going to do, now reports are all around, SSRS reports, kind of, like I said, it's a report, and it's geared around, really around kind of the size of your paper, if you like. It's geared around kind of, rather than for the screen, the delivery is for paper. So you've got things like, if I look at my properties, my report properties, I want to kind of set, okay, it's landscape. I want to set it for kind of A4. And I could always also do with like setting my body properties to be, oops, the same. So I've got an idea of kind of how much area I've got to play with on my report. You can see when I come to insert, I've got, again, quite a manner of charts. You know, this is one of the good things. You've got quite a, Microsoft bought a company called Dundas, which gave them all of these charts and ability to kind of play around and format a lot of this stuff. I'm going to insert, first of all, I'm going to get my data. So I'm going to add a data source. Now I can share a data source with multiple reports, or I can embed this in my report. I'm just going to embed this one. I'm going to pull my data from SQL Server. I'm going to connect to my SQL Server, and I've got my plane crash database. I also need to be sure and set credentials correctly. Now, if you're setting this up on premises, and you've got a server farm and you want people to use these with their own Windows credentials, you've got to also think about, you know, getting your infrastructure guys to set up Kerberos authentication for you to be able to use that. The alternative is to set up like a service account. So every time, no matter who it is in the room using the report, it goes off with a stock set of credentials to the database, and so in effect everyone will see the same data. When you get questions like, you know, this half of the room can only see a certain, see different data to this half of the room, then you've got you entering into the world of Kerberos authentication then. Okay, once I've connected to my data source, I then need a set of data to use. So I'm going to use my data source for that. And I've only got one table in here. I'm going to pull all of my fields in. And there's all of my fields here. Now I can start to put this data on the report, so I'm just going to insert a table. And I'm going to push some fields across here. Date, let's go with the aircraft type, operator, the year maybe, the country, and there we go. Now, again, I can do things like, you know, format this report. So my kind of header row, if you like, I can format. I can also change the font size. You know, again, I've quite a fair bit of manipulation on the report. You can see all the properties down the right-hand side. the different things I can do to the report. So in terms of like look and feel and display, I've got quite a few options. But again, it's all about being able to learn all of this stuff and be trained to how to use Report Builder and use SQL reporting reports. But if you know your way around, it's fairly, fairly quickly you can start to put a report together. You can do things like I can add a header. I can move my title up here, for example. Move my table around. I can add parameters as well. So I might want to add a parameter for the year. And I might want to make that default to 2014. And then what I can do in my table, I can apply a filter to that and say, okay, well, I want the year to be equal to my parameter, and I can just pull that in. Note on here, I've got, for certain fields, I can apply functions, and I've got various functions here, date and time, string functions, which I can use. So for my date, for example, rather than just show the date, I might want to actually put an expression in there, and I might want to do something like format the date. So I'm just formatting that just to show like a short date version of my date. And I might also want to so that's my table, and I can test my report, just run that. Just make sure the data's coming in for it. I can do things like, I can then go back to my design mode, and maybe I want to mess around with some of these column sizes because they're too big or not big enough. And I might want to insert a chart. So if I insert, a little line chart, for example. But it's not as intuitive as Excel to configure this stuff. So, I'm clicking around because I'm used to using it. But, first thing I would say is, okay, well, how do I configure this chart? How do I, and you click on it in a certain way, and this thing pops up next to it. I can add my values, so I might want to add fatalities here. And then for my groups, I want to add might want to add, for example, the year on there. So you can see how I gradually pulling a report together. So I've got my chart there. Now, when I'm saving this report back, I'm saving it back to a document library in SharePoint. So we'll call this one SP Evo2. And if I flip to my SharePoint library and refresh that, there's my Evo2. Now, it's a document in SharePoint. If I click on it, it knows to open it in reporting services. I have my parameter over here, so if I wanted to change that to 2013 as a user and reapply, I can do. I've got my export, I can print here. I've got export options, so I can export to PDF. So it's quite rich in terms of what you do with that report. Now, some other options I've got, which is quite unique to reporting services, is I can set up what's called a subscription. and I can say, okay, I'm going to put it in someone else's document library. So I've got a management document library. It's going to be a PDF version. I've got some other options on there as well, and I can configure a schedule for this report. So I might want to do that. For now, I'm going to do this every 2 minutes. So now I've got a schedule for this report, and in a couple of minutes we should look back in this management library and should be able to see a PDF version of that. So that's one of the good things, delivery mechanism of this report. And I could do that, I can either put it in a document library or I could email that to them. So quite a common request is to have a report sent via email to a team or someone's inbox. Even though you've got SharePoint and you can share it, of course, I still want it via email. But that's quite a unique kind of facility, if you like, for reporting services. So, so with reporting services, just to sum up on that then, you can kind of already get a feel for the difference between Excel and that tool. So even though I'm quite familiar with both tools, and I went through that quite quickly, you should hopefully get a feel for what you can do and what you can't do in each, and some of the benefits. See if that report's popped in there. No. 2 minutes, it's usually 2 minutes plus wherever the timer job adds on, to be honest. So it could be 3 or 4 minutes, but we'll come back and check that a bit later. Now I'm not going to put my PowerPoint in full screen mode because it messes with the resolution, so I'm just going to leave it like this. So the final tool I'm going to look at is PowerView. Now PowerView is initially came out as part of reporting services. So if you had reporting services 2012 and you had the BI version of that or the enterprise version of that, you'll get PowerView with that. So again, another advantage of using reporting services with SharePoint is that you'll get the availability to use PowerView reports, even if you haven't got Excel 2013. So a lot of people will say to me, oh, I really want to use PowerView, but I don't have the latest version of Excel. Well, this is another option that you could use it as kind of a reporting services mode of doing it. The most common way of using it is through Excel, like an Excel add-in. You need Excel 2013, you need Excel 2013 Professional Plus edition, or you need the Office 365 version of Excel. And it's an add-in that now kind of becomes, it's an add-in, but it's kind of switched on by default and it's all there for you. Now, Microsoft are moving away from using Excel as their medium for Power BI, and they're moving towards something called a Power BI Designer, which is a separate product, which you can, if you go to powerbi.com, you'll be able to read all about this, and you'll be able to download this tool for free, and just it's in preview mode, so you'll be able to have a look at it and play around with it. For those of you that have used PowerView, in some ways it extends that, so that it gives you a lot more options in terms of what charts you've got available to use. So there's things like funnel charts, different types of maps, so you can go and have a look at that. In addition to that, it's always going to incorporate, Power Query, Power Pivot, but it's not quite there yet. It's kind of in preview mode, and I can, if we've got time at the end, I'll show you a little bit of that. So when would you use PowerView? Again, it's a very useful tool for quick ad hoc reporting. It's got the most modern looking display. So Excel can still look a little bit dated. Reporting services, even though it's professional, can look a little bit dated. It's great for mapping. You don't have to think or prepare your data for mapping. If you've just got a set of country names, you can throw that. The service built into PowerView, the Bing Maps service, will go to Bing Maps, and it will return all the latitude and longitude for you for it to map itself. And it's very straightforward and easy to use. So it's not ideal, you know, those things on the right-hand side, it's not ideal in those situations. It's not great, again, if you want to print or if you want fine control over how you want your report to look. So what I'm going to do now is have a look at PowerView. Now, for my data, just a bit of a kind of recap. Actually, when I was researching this, there's a lot of data sets. There's a lot like data.gov.uk, and there's a lot of free data available for me to use for these things. There's not for plane crashes. I don't know whether it's people like to keep it, you know, this sort of thing tight-lipped or whatever, but there's no freely available data source to pick up this data. There is a few websites like this one, planecrashinfo.com, which gives you very detailed information about any crash. And I contacted the guy, and he said, no, you can't have my database, but you can use any information that's on my website. So I was like, okay, great. So I've got to, you know, there's some information on here, like the dates and some tables on here, but I would have to kind of pull all that stuff off. And I thought that was quite a challenge. But this is where something like Power Query is great and comes in. So just to show you an example of pulling that data in, if I've got the Power Query add-in, I can just go from web. I can pull in, can get his, so this page, for example, this is crashes from 1921. I'll just put the URL in there. And it's looking for tables in that web page. So if I hover over, it's found two. There's my table that I want to pick out. I could just select that, load it in, and that's in my workbook. It's done it for me. And it's put it into a table ready for me to use. Now, it's not quite how I want it. So, for example, if I look at the right-hand column, you know, the way he's done his fatalities, he's got like different numbers. So he's put, I think it was something like people on board, number of fatalities, and in brackets, those that were on the ground. So I need to split that out. But Power Query, again, gives me the facility to do that. So I can do things like, so I can, for example, so if I go to an existing one and edit that. On the right-hand side here, you can see all of the steps I've applied to the data. So I've got my source data. I've selected this kind of, this option up here to say use first row as headers. So it's put the correct headers in my data. I've changed the type of some columns. And we've got these options up here like split column. So on this finance, on the, on the column on the right-hand side, the fatalities one, I split those out. So I could just do split column by delimiter, and I just split column by like the slash or the comma, whatever it was. I managed to break those two out, and then I can kind of rename the columns until down here I've got the data how I want it. And it will just do that as a number of steps within this Excel workbook. And you know, obviously he's got a page per year. So I went through, pulled in, pretty much copy and paste, just changed the year. So once I'd done that, all those steps for 1 year, I got them back as far as I could be, I had the time to go back to. And then there's like some merge options where I merged all of those together and got my complete kind of plane crashing. So you can see here I've got, if you look at the source, I've combined all of my years together. So I've got this. And then that goes back into my my workbook then. So I've got my complete kind of crash log. So that was the way I kind of used Power Query to bring that data in from the web and create myself a database basically. And then what I can do is, using that, I can then insert a Power View sheet, which is just another sheet in my workbook. And I can start to do things like I've lost that window now. Let's reload this. So let's insert a new Power View sheet. Okay. And here I've got my data on the right-hand side. I've got an example table it's pulled in for me. And if I wanted to do something like map the country and the number of fatalities there. Sorry, so let's untick some of these. So I'm going to pick the fields that I want. So I want country there, fatalities, and then I'm going to show that as a map. And if I pull that out, so in terms of like mapping that data, so I can see here, you know, this start to see the data graphically on a map, and I don't have to prepare my data for that, it's just done for me. I can do things like, let's take the title off of here. Down here I might want to show, for example, a chart of number of crashes per year. So I'm going to bring that down here. So I've got quite a good fine control over where my components, if you like, are. I need to just put my year down into the axis there. And I want to use the count rather than the sum. So the important thing there is, obviously, you can see things are going down over time. So from 1990, the number of crashes there actually in the hundreds, down to 2015. If I want to show say another chart, I just click in an area of space on the page, and I can always reset. So I've got fatalities again, this time by year. And if I show that as a line chart, I can drag that down and position it. Again, just check I've got the right summation, which I have, got some. And I can, obviously, you know, I've got some control over the look and feel. I've got the good things here is I've got things like themes if I wanted to change, you know, the colour theme of a certain report. If I've got on one of my reports, on one of my reports I had some pictures. Now if you've got like in your data, you've got, say for example, like an image URL or something like that, you can actually plot those images and use it as a slicer. Let me just see quickly if I've got that. I've got another spreadsheet which I use based on World Cup football data, which I presented last year. So I've got like images here, for example, I could pull in. So if I'm showing like the different years, you know, this is probably a better, more organised dashboard, if you like, showing the year of the tournament, the football that was used and the trophy that was used, and the map of where it was held, the attendance there by year, and being able to kind of integrate. So if I pick, for example, you know, where the continent of where the World Cup was in South America, which teams have won it, obviously before 2014. But it's the good thing about PowerView is, you know, you don't have to worry about hooking filters up to multiple components on your chart. When I, if you remember the first Excel chart I used, I had 2 or 3 charts, and I had to manually wire them up to make sure that, you know, my year slider worked on both charts. PowerView, you don't have to do that; it's done for you. And I can push that up to SharePoint, Office 365, or if I'm on premises, I've got SharePoint 2013. I've got Power Pivot for SharePoint installed, Excel services installed, and reporting services. There's quite a lot of configuration there, but if I've got all of that stuff set up, then I can use PowerView on my on-prem environment as well. Now the way that things are going, if I just bring up powerbi.com, okay, doesn't like that for some reason. What I was going to hopefully show you was that if I could connect to powerbi.com, I could show you, how to manipulate a dashboard on the web page as well. Now, I couldn't actually take that Excel, the Excel chart I created there, so not that one. So this one, or the plane crash one, I couldn't actually take that and push that up to powerbi.com. It's a different format. But I can certainly upload my data to powerbi.com and recreate my dashboard, if you like, from that. But by creating this sheet in SharePoint, I can upload that quite easily to my Power BI site or to an on-premises SharePoint site.
Does it render in the browser as well, or Excel services?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly as you see it. Now at the moment, the on-premises version uses Silverlight. Power BI is moving to HTML5. Now, I would expect that the next version of SharePoint will be the on-premises version. It will all go over to HTML5 as well. So just to wrap up then, just a couple of kind of something to remember. First of all, while I was doing my research for this presentation, I came across this app on the phone which apparently tells you your chances of going down if you really wanted to use that. Yeah, I would expect it all to be in the millions, to be honest with you. But it's quite one of those apps that's kind of out there for a bit of fun, I think. And also found out that Hooters do an airline. See where they position their portholes for the O's. One thing to remember, that's the percentage of chance that your plane will crash. It's the most safest form of transport. Hopefully today, even though the presentations, don't get a lot of time in an hour to cover so much stuff, and for it all to kind of work and be quick to show you everything. But hopefully you got to feel, the main thing I wanted to get across today was to feel that you have, there's 3 options, 3 tools that you could use to build a report, and you've got some idea of the differences between the 3 methods that I use, some of the pros and cons, and to give you a better idea of when you're tasked with doing a report or a dashboard, you've got those things in mind. If you have any questions, please see me afterwards. I'll be around, or if not now, any time in the next couple of days. Feel free to ask me any questions if you like. My Twitter handle, I don't know if it comes up very clearly there, is @m_Macrae. If you want to get hold of me that way, more than happy to kind of, get email addresses off you and that kind of thing, and help you out. So I hope you enjoyed today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference. Thank you.